Is this thing on? Okay, cool. All right, we're back. Welcome back to a new edition of Holden Court here on the First Day Hoops Report YouTube channel. My name is Chris Stevens. I am the founding editor of First Day Hoops Report and the Holden Court host, which is a podcast, YouTube show that talks all things Delaware high school and college basketball. Hopefully, you all have been doing well out there. Life just been lifing for your boy. That's no other way to put it. I've been inundated with work obligations for my HBCU sports job, trying different new things, from a creative standpoint. I have a music podcast now. My boss at HBCU Sports said, as much as you talk about music, you need to do a music podcast. I said, why not? So my music podcast is called On the Groove Line. I will put a link to that in the description or in the comments so you guys can check that out and find out how just deep my music nerd bag goes. But this is about basketball, about Delaware basketball. Let's get to it. We'll start with the National Federation of High School rule changes for basketball. And I'm sorry to say, folks, a universal shot clock was not a part of the 2025-2026 rule changes. So, no, Delaware will not have a shot clock for 2026. Delaware won't have a shot clock for 2027. Probably won't have one for 2028 either. I mean, it just doesn't seem like, the powers that be really care that much about basketball for us to have something that benefits the kids and develops them and gets them to the next level and be prepared for the next level. Maybe something changes along those lines in the near future. I don't know. But the interesting rule change, and Sean Green from WDEL tweeted this out when it dropped, was there's going to be something called bench decorum. And the way it's explained is like, how do we know what bench decorum is, what is proper, what is not? Conversations need to be had. So basically what they're trying to say is they want everybody to sit on a bench like statues. So when kids pull off these sick crossover moves or the chant or the rare opportunity we get dunks and, posters in Delaware, kids are just supposed to sit there and go, bravo, good show and all of that, buddy, pip, pip. Now, you're not going to be able to get these kids to sit down. You're not. And, coaches, they like to walk out, a far distance from their bench to yell instructions. You're going to start teeing up coaches yelling out defenses and offensive plays now? I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work. And that's why I said when I saw Sean's tweet, I quoted it and said, this is why you can't just stop Delaware basketball in the second weekend of March, which of course is when the state tournament ends, when we decide our boys and girls champions. There needs to be clinics, there needs to be workshops, there needs to be meetings, there needs to be a year-round concern about basketball. Like, you can't just drop these rule changes and say, oh, we'll make it up as we go. Because what if a coach is trying to yell out instructions to a player who may not hear very well or needs his attention? Your ref is just gonna go around and say, bam, technical foul. I'm not saying Delaware referees do that. I mean, this is a national rule. So, this is something that's going to affect kids across the country. And I don't know how referees in the other 49 states go. But I know in Delaware, it's rare that referees hand out technicals for the sake of handing out technicals. Like, you really got to do something to get yourself a technical here. So I'm not casting aspersions on the referees. I'm just saying, how often do we see kids get excited about something their teammate is doing, or a coach is trying to, get somebody's attention for instructions or whatever? We're going to just start, giving out sideline warnings and technicals just for excitement and a little bit of, trying to get somebody's attention? I don't know. It just seems very odd to me. And it doesn't help the game. A universal shot clock would help the game. I'll tell you that much. It just doesn't seem like it's in the cards for some reason, because my thing is, if NFHS is what I'm trying to say, wanted a universal shot clock, it would have been done years ago. But here we are halfway through the 2020s, and plenty of states, including this one, don't have a shot clock. I don't know what that's going to look like for kids moving forward here in Delaware, as we have plenty of kids who aspire to play college basketball, maybe even more. But I don't know how that's going to work when you don't give these kids an opportunity to develop their skills in a way that puts them on par with their counterparts from Jersey, Pennsylvania, the DMV, and on it goes. Because you're going to get kids from Delaware who go out to sizable colleges. And I'm not even talking about a D1 level, because D2 ball gets busy as well. I mean, there are some D2 guys and girls that will show up at a local gym and just give out rec to anybody that's in there. So, I mean, I'm not just talking about from a D1 standpoint. D3 too, NAIA, JUCO. You got to be good to play college basketball at some point somewhere. It doesn't matter what level. If you're playing college basketball at some level, then that means that you are among the best basketball players in the country. Easily. I mean, you might not be the most talented, but you might be the hardest working. You may not be the hardest working, but your natural gifts surpass everybody else's. I mean, that's the thing about basketball. Sometimes, I mean, there are some people who can get away with just being supremely talented, and there are some people who just grind and work hard and make themselves great. I mean, and that's the thing. You got to decide which one you want to be. Because there are some kids that if they put in, I would say probably about 15% more effort that to compare with their talent, we'd have a lot more D1 athletes from a basketball perspective. We would. I mean, and I'm not knocking these kids because life be life. I told y'all started this podcast. Life was life for your boy. That's why there hasn't been an episode in 2 months and change. But I mean, it just depends on what your focus is, what your dedication is, what your desire is. And that's something that I hope doesn't come across as being shady or being mean-spirited. Is just something that I want more for these kids because I see that some of these kids have the talent to play at a high level D2 or a mid-major D1. And you just got to put a hustle in, man. And Steve Harvey once said, the hustle is sold separately. The dream is free, but the hustle is sold separately. You got to develop the hustle. You got to develop the grind. You got to develop the will, the intensity, the desire, all of that. You have to be able to develop that on your own. You're free to dream about playing at a Division I school. You're free to dream about getting a lot of your college education paid for. That's free. But the hustle to get there, that's where you put in the work. That's where you pay with your time, with your energy, with your learning, your skills, your training. Again, the dream is free, but the hustle is sold separately. That's one of the few smart things Steve Harvey says. And I mean, let me stop. I mean, Steve Harvey's a great motivator. Would I take dating advice from Steve Harvey? Absolutely not. But would I take hustle advice from Steve Harvey? Absolutely. That's one of my favorite sayings ever. The dream is free, but the hustle is sold separately. Just want to put that out there. And we've got a lot going on right now. There's the AAU travel season. There's the college. What's that called again? The open period. I think it's the open period, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, you have, AAU tournaments going on at Spooky Nook and different things of that nature. You've got the out of your league thing by Chuck Rock. That's coming up on Monday, as a matter of fact. That starts Monday at a few different locations. If you are able to get out there to the Field House and a couple other locations that Lamar Mason has, I highly recommend you do. And then next Monday is the Duffy's Hope League draft at Wilmington Powell on 37th and Market. And I hope a lot more kids stay closer to home with respect to summer basketball. I mean, I get that the AAU circuit is what's popping now, but I went on a radio show this morning, Saturday. I went on a radio show Saturday morning up in the Philadelphia area. Shout out to my guys, Roy Burton and Chris Domingo from the Broad Street line on 106.5 Philly Cam. And I told them that I felt like AAU is why American basketball isn't what it used to be. Because everybody goes on the AAU circuit looking for the cameras for the most part, and the cameras are looking for the players. But are you developing your skills? Are you developing your left hand if you're a right hander? Are you developing your right hand if you're left-handed? Are you still the same player that you ended in February or March, coming back November, December? Or did you add something to your bag? Did you get stronger? Well, I mean, you can't help your height. Nobody can help their height. Like, listen, I wanted to be a basketball player and a baseball player all my life. And I played football in high school briefly because I grew out this way instead of this way. If I had been about 6'2" or 6'3", I definitely would have been on somebody's basketball court. I topped out at 5'10". So, basketball just wasn't going to be for me. But I mean, if you grow in height, then you have to get strong. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, we got a lot of 6'5" kids around here, but they be like 175, 180 pounds. We got to get y'all up to like 205, 210. And a lot of the guards that are like 150, 160, we got to get y'all up to 175, 180. I mean, but then again, the human body is different. Not everybody can, not everybody can be cut. Not everybody can be toned. Not everybody can be buff. But you got to get stronger at some point, whatever that looks like for you. And I mean, just thinking about how these kids travel all the time during the summer, I think it would be ideal if guys stayed closer to home, because you can look at the history of Storeman's Classic. I mean, Lenny Brown just went in the Delaware Sports Hall of Fame this past week, and Lenny again had one of the greatest dunks I've ever seen in my life, and that was in the Storeman's Classic game. Wasn't it well, we didn't have social media back then. There was no internet in the early 90s. Well, at least not, the internet as we know it now. I mean, America Online started to become a thing like 93, 94, but we didn't have social media. We didn't have these. We didn't have smartphones. Could you imagine the damage that could have been done in the 90s with smartphones? Be glad we didn't have smartphones in the 90s. But yes, we didn't have social media. We didn't have cameras everywhere. We didn't have the internet. You had to go play, and you had to go see people play for yourself. And like I said, Lenny Brown, one of the greatest dunks I ever saw, his knee was on somebody's neck, and his arm he was the original Vince Carter, the honey dip, whatever the heck they call it. I mean, all of that in one motion, bam. And I said, yeah. I was already a basketball fan, but I became a local basketball fan at that point. I was like 10, 11 years old. Right? Actually, I was probably 9 or 10, actually. So, yeah. Closer to 10. Yeah, I'll say 10, 11, somewhere about that, because it had to be the summer of 92. Yeah, summer of 92 at Bancroft's gym. Well, Bancroft ain't even Bancroft no more. It is the Maurice Pritchett Senior Academy, and it's a brand new building. And Mr. Pritchett, if you're from East Side, if you know, you know. Mr. Pritchett was one of the greatest human beings to walk this earth as a teacher, an educator, a school principal, and he was a pretty good basketball player at Howard in the early 60s. Rest in peace to Mr. Pritchett. And, but yeah, that's just me going off the beaten path, because that just brought up some great old memories. Going over to Bancroft, seeing Mr. Pritchett, Mr. Clark, Mr. Vassos, the vice principals, and Mr. Pritchett, who was the main principal, letting open up the doors so everybody could get in. Good times, man. Good times. And I lived right across the street from Bancroft. I lived on Pine Street, Nathan Pine, my entire life. So, I used to be able to just walk 2 minutes from my door across the street to Bancroft to go watch the 15 to 18s play in Storms. It was a time, boy. It was a time. But yeah, to my point, I really wish that we got, ooh, excuse me. I wish we had more local leagues like, out of our league and everything down to Fieldhouse, what Lamar Mason is doing with Check Rock, and what Duffy Samuels is doing with Duffy's Hope at Wilmington Powell. Because iron sharpens iron. And I get that we want our kids to test themselves against, PA, Jersey, DMV guys and girls, because that's who they're going to see in college. But I mean, you're also going to see people from California, Texas, Illinois, Michigan, Ohio, Arizona, Kentucky, Georgia. We're going to start sending them everywhere just to get, that test. Don't think that's feasible. But we have enough talent here that guys and girls can just, keep, bumping elbows with each other to make each other better. So kudos to Lamar Mason for what he's doing down at the Fieldhouse, and always kudos to Duffy for what he's done with Duffy's Hope over the years. And hopefully more players, guys and girls, stay closer to home instead of just, spending their summers, on road trips and different things of that nature. I mean, granted, it's good to see other parts of the country. Believe me, I've lived in Delaware except for 3.5 years. I've lived in Delaware my entire life. So, it ain't bad to go out and see something new. Like I went 2022, I had a work trip to Atlanta, and just spending 48 hours in Atlanta was just a breath of fresh air. So I get that we want the kids to see different things, but I still hope that there's a point that we can sort of have a little middle ground to where they can stay closer to home, but still get that training and that hustle that they need to become great. And the next topic on the docket is something that the great Kevin Tresolini, I call him the dean of Delaware sports media for a reason. And Trez, please don't take this as a slight, because me and Trez talk a lot whenever we run into each other at high school basketball games or whatever. Kevin Tresolini has been with the News Journal as long as I've been alive. You know, I was born in 1981, and I just, having a newspapers.com subscription, just looking at old news journals from back in the day, I would see Kevin's name as far back as 1981. So he's seen a lot of things. And so that's why I call him the Dean, because he's the last man standing from that great era of when we had different newspapers, different radio stations, and even a television station. Shouts out to Channel 2 and the great Jim Hayes with the Channel 2 News Sports. But Trez covered a piece that DIAA is looking at a competition committee and still talking about splitting sports in divisions. That includes basketball. And this is gonna be something that I'm gonna be careful with my words with, but I want to make my point abundantly clear. These kids' lives are already politicized enough. And I know that the dude behind it is a state senator, and he's also the Polytech wrestling coach. So, I don't think there's a conflict of interest there, but obviously it's not a conflict of interest because he's a coach. But I think that his push to separate the sports is short-sighted at best. At best, it's short-sighted because we haven't talked enough about just, again, how these kids are faced with choices that don't necessarily make them greater athletes or greater students either. Like, the public school system in Delaware is DOA, unfortunately. I kept saying in earlier episodes that maybe there's a way to save it, maybe there's a way to get more of an influence in it. But when you think about it, people don't care. The people that, don't want to have tax increases, property increases for school referendums north of the canal, I'll say, because we're about to get another high school. The Summit Bridge Aviators coming to a basketball gym, a football field, and all sorts of play near you in 2027. But again, I grew up in Delaware when there was one high school in Middletown. Well, two. St. Andrews has always been around, but one public high school, uno, and that was Middletown High. Then comes Apple. Then came St. George's. Then came MOT Charter, which is a charter school. Then comes Odessa. Now we've got Summit Bridge coming. I hate that name, by the way, the Aviators. I know they wanted Mavericks because another school was Mavericks, but we can have two Mavericks. You can have a big Maverick school and a little Maverick school. So just maybe because I like the way the Dallas Mavericks have their colors. Green and blue is a color scheme that you can't go wrong with. But then again, St. George's has green and blue, so I guess that's why they went with the Aviators. But yeah, because the Summit Bridge Airport, duh. But I still think Mavericks would have been a better name than Aviators. But it's just my opinion. But if you had told me at any point in my youth that 20 to 25 to 30 years later that we would have 6 high schools in the greater Middletown area, and there will not be a public high school in the city of Wilmington, and there won't be any new high schools save for charters north of the canal, I would have said you were crazy. But that's where we are at this point. And that's part of the problem. Because I saw a story that Sean Green actually reported this too, that they were trying to figure out a way to, get Wilmington High back in that building. And one of the options was to move the Wilmington charter kids out to McCain's campus and close McCain. Now, as someone who has had the distinct pleasure of covering the McCain basketball programs and just going to McCain for different sports as a freelancer back in my youthful days, how does that help the kids that go to McCain? Like, are you just going to ship them all off to Dickinson? Because because you got to, there's an application process, I believe, for Conrad and DMA, and not everybody, did respect the DMA, but not everybody wants to, wear uniforms to school every day and, have military training. Nobody, not a knock against anybody that does, making that clear. But there aren't many options for kids who just want to get an education and, be competitive basketball players north of the canal. Like, everybody's got to. That's why there's been such a population boom in the South. Like, it wouldn't surprise me in the next couple of years if they start talking about a second high school for Smyrna. Wouldn't surprise me if there eventually becomes a push for another high school south of Dover or even north of Dover, really. Maybe that's where the second Smyrna high school kind of mitigate that edge, which is put that on the border of, Smyrna and Dover and just call it Kenton High School or something like that. If anybody steals my idea, I want my coins. I'm gonna put my Cash App in my bio, because Cherish Bryant's mom always like, you gonna put your Cash App in your bio? Put your Cash App in your bio. Yes, ma'am. I'm gonna put my Cash App in my bio. So yeah, if somebody steals my idea for Kenton High School, Cash App. I want my money. I want my coins, because I don't make no money from this anyway. But back to the point. Separating the sports into divisions does not help the kids. The only sport that really needed to be separated was football, because football is a violent sport. I mean, we can talk about how the physicality has been ramped down, but it hasn't been ramped down to the point where football is just the safest game in the world. Like, there's no way that you would put AI in its current iteration or early college on the same field as, say, Middletown or Abo or Sally's or Dover, or even Howard. Yes, I'm a Howard Wildcat. Even the Howard football program, you wouldn't have them playing AI now. I mean, earlier in the decade and in the millennium, yes, sure, but now, no, no, sir, no, man. I mean, football was the only sport that needed to be separated, and credit the DIA. That is working out perfectly. You have the best at the 3A level, you have the best at the 2A level, and the 1A kids still have something to fight for. Like, football isn't a chore for them. Football is fun again. So yes, credit the DIA for getting that right, that football needed to be separated. The rest of these sports do not need to be separated. Not baseball, not softball, not lacrosse. Field hockey, that's tough. Because there was a time, when I was growing up, when the independent conference won every conceivable field hockey and girls lacrosse championship there was. I mean, you had Tower Hill that was great in those two sports. You had Tatman, who was great in those sports. Who else? St. Andrews. St. Andrews had one of the most mind-boggling runs for girls lacrosse I'd ever seen, because I'll never forget. One of my first assignments for the Delaware State News when I interned for Andy Walter in the summer of 2005 was the girls lacrosse championship at Wesley. Now it's Delaware State downtown DSU. But back then it was Wesley College. Yes, I've been around a while, kids and adults. But Kate was their opponent that year, and their coach was like, we're just happy that we were able to play with them. 20 years later, Kate has won 15 of the last 16 girls lacrosse championships. So, I mean, the tables turn eventually. Nobody would have thought that St. Andrews would stop their run of domination. It eventually stopped. Nobody thought that Sal's could be beaten on a football field for a long time. Somehow it happened. Who else? Sanford went a good while between state championships. I mean, people might look at, 2021 to 2025 and say, oh, it wasn't really that long of a run. When you've won 11 state championships over the course of the last 39 years, you sort of get accustomed to being at least in the chase. And the last couple of years were not good for, they were great. They were great up to a point. But this Sanford team this year that just won the boys championship, I think after a while, it just started to look like that they were just the better team, more prepared team, and just more cohesive than a lot of the other teams. I mean, St. E's had a ton of talent, but they had no size. Dover had the champion's edge, but they just sort of forgot how to play in that championship game. St. George's was so close. I wish we had gotten the St. George's Sanford final. I think that respected Dover and Steph Wilson and those kids, but I feel like that St. George's Sanford matchup would have been a little bit more of a, styles make fight kind of deal, because I felt that if Sanford could keep Dover off the scoreboard, that Sanford would win. And that's pretty much what happened. But these sports don't need to be separated. What we need is better, school systems across the board, that these public schools can at least have a fighting chance again. And these kids want to go there again, and their parents feel comfortable sending them there again. That's the key. Everything else just will fall into place. But if we keep throwing charter schools out there, that brings me back to that point I was making about, people wanting to bring Wilmington High back, and then Red Clay talking about moving the charter kids out to McCain and closing McCain. You could have put Wilmington Charter at the now vacant DuPont campus about a couple of miles north there. But what's there now? Odyssey Charter. And great fields, by the way. Only thing Odyssey Charter is missing is a gym. If they had a gym on that campus, they would be dangerous because you could get kids to, come play there and stay there. But they have a nice soccer field, they have a baseball field, they have a softball field now. That campus has become Odyssey Charter, but pretty much. But if Odyssey Charter hadn't been there, you could have moved the Wilmington Charter kids up that way because nobody really knows the difference. The line of demarcation. Everybody's like, well, that's close to Hockessin. Is it Hockessin actually? No. If you feel that bad about it, you could have just called them Greater Wilmington Charter or whatever, but that's not an option now. So, splitting up the sports just doesn't help the kids, in my opinion. This is Chris Stevens talking. You might feel different. If you feel differently, that's what the comments are for. Drop a comment. Let me know how you feel. But I just don't think that it serves the kids, especially from a basketball standpoint, because if we're going to start handing out Division I and Division II basketball championships when you have less than 60 high schools on each side that play basketball, then you've got a problem. You've got a serious problem. And it's big, and it's bigger than basketball. It's bigger than competitiveness. It's bigger than what's best for the kids. You have something that is just gotten too far out of control. And yeah, you can make the point that there has not been a public school champion on the girls' side in years. Let's think about it. When was the last time? Was it Del Castle in 2009? I think it was Del Castle in 2009. Because I can't remember who won in 2010. But yeah, Sanford won in 2010, I can tell you off the rip. Sanford, Marcus Thompson had Angie White, Amber Jen Wright, and Krishania Alston. They won in 2010, 2011. Ursuline won in 2012. Saney won in 2013. Sanford won again in 2014. 2015 was Ursuline again, I think. Ursuline was the next 3 years, 15, 16, 17. Conrad won in 18. Sanford won in 19. We didn't have a championship in 20. Saney won in 21. Caryville won in 22. Sanford won in 23. Ursuline won last year. Caryville won this year. So yeah, we have not had a public school champion since Del Castle won in 2009 on the girls' side. That train left the station in the 70s, to be honest with you, because CYO girls had been dominating public schools for a long time, going back to the early 1980s. So that train left the station long ago. We were never going to have a public school, private school balance in girls basketball because that's just the way it is. You had Ursuline, you had Padua, you had St. Mark's, you had St. Elizabeth. Then Sanford developed later on in the late 90s or early 2000s. And it's just not, it just wasn't meant to be. It wasn't in the cards. For boys, though, you can say that the boys probably could stand a separation, but I don't think it helps them because, look at it. We had Dover win it last year. They almost won it again this year. Penn almost beat Sal's in 23. You've had some teams that have won from a public school standpoint. The last, public school team before Dover was Smyrna in 2017. So it's hard, man. It is hard to win a state championship regardless of your public school or private school. Let's not make it harder or water it down by separating the kids. And Chuck Durante, the president of the Delaware Sports Writers and Broadcasters Association and the Delaware Sports Hall of Fame, had a great column about how separating the championships, he cited historical references that, just say, why separate it? You don't need to separate. And I agree with Chuck because, I've seen these games for the last 6 seasons, and there's some public school talent out there. It wouldn't surprise me if public school won it this year. Howard just lost one of their key guys. Caden Brown's transferring to a school in Philly, from what I understand. But as the great Curtis Watkins always says, don't tell me where anybody is until August 15th. That's how I operate. I see these kids, we know that Gigi is gone. That might be an entirely different episode in itself because, Gigi is one of those talents that we won't see probably again for a while. But then again, Amory Anderson is at Ursuline now, and I've seen her play up close. You can go back to the First Day Hoops Report Instagram page when I went to Coach Rob Turner's open runs at PS and see the clips that I put together of Amory. She gets busy. So maybe Ursuline won't have a drop-off. I don't think they will. But, the transfer thing is what it is because we don't have anything that keeps the kids here. Because the way Delaware basketball plays is antiquated. It's archaic. It doesn't help the kids. I mean, we have spin moves called as travels. Kids can't do a Euro step. We don't have a shot clock. I mean, how are the kids supposed to get better nationally if we're still playing this old style of ball? Just something to think about. And that's pretty much it. I didn't expect to talk for 30 minutes, but when you haven't done a show in 2 months, you got to start somewhere. So hopefully I'll be able to keep these things going. So thank y'all for watching this edition of Holding Court. All the contact information for First State Hoop Support will be in the description below. So thank y'all for watching. I hope you got, oh yeah, before I sign off, shouts out to the class of 2025. It has been a pleasure to cover you all. May you be successful in all your endeavors in your life, whether it's basketball, whether it's college, whether it's working, whether it's whatever. It's been fun. Congratulations to everybody that has made it through 4 years of Delaware High School basketball. If there's a next level for you, we will be cheering for you. Whatever you do that's in a positive way, we will be cheering for you and rooting for you and hoping for the best. Okay, now we're done. All right, so we're out. So until the next time we talk, y'all take care of yourselves and each other. We will be back hopefully next week. So yeah. All right, we're going to see y'all next time. Bye.